kind of have to pull it down. It's,
Oh.
yep.
So that's it, right?
That, and then you want
What does modern art, an event venue, a Cirrus school, an A&P program, and a warbird restoring facility all have in common? Well, they can all be found at Hangar 743. Most people would probably never expect to hear the word Cirrus and warbird in the same sentence, but here they make it happen. Let's see how.
Well, what's up, you guys? So today I'm here at Albany Airport at Hangar 743. I'm here with Austin and then Dave Prescott. Nice to meet you.
Hey, how's it going?
But we've been talking about doing this interview for a while, and we finally got to get together to make it happen.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you guys do here.
So we started a foundation to preserve the history of World War II aircraft by keeping them flying. That migrated into starting a warbird maintenance and restoration shop after significant damage to our B-25 when it was returning from Hawaii. And as we got into a workforce development program to train new A&P mechanics, we realized it would make sense for us to start a Cirrus training center and a Cirrus maintenance shop so that new A&P mechanics have access to working on the newest, latest, greatest, as well as restoring World War II aircraft.
And that has to have been really interesting. You know, we were kind of talking earlier, we didn't get this on camera, but we were talking earlier a little bit about how, you know, it might be kind of hard for younger people to actually get their hands on warbirds and, you know, get out in the field and learn how to do that and, you know, keep that knowledge alive and keep it around. So how do you make that happen?
Again, all learning things that I learned, but I'm kind of amazed to have learned. Do you remember a term called Rosie the Riveter during World War II? We ended up learning that actually doing aircraft restoration is probably one of the easiest entry-level hands-on tasks that we can start training our next generation of kids. One of the things we realized is very similar to our female workforce during World War II that had very, very little hand tool skills because it just simply wasn't taught in schools. Our kids now coming out of high school have little to no hand tool skills. They don't use screwdrivers or wrenches at home or around cars anymore. Our cars are simply way more reliable and maintenance-free than they were even 20 or 30 years ago. You know, so our kids are growing up with no hand tool skills. So one of the biggest challenges we run into is how do you get those hand tool skills and start teaching them so that they can start moving into any trade, not just airframe and power plant mechanic. What we identified when we started doing the sheet metal restoration is, doing sheet metal restoration and sheet metal patterns is actually pretty easy, and it's very easy to build the skills because there's so many repetitive tasks. Just one single panel on the B-25 may have as many as 1,000 holes to drill. Yeah. And what's the best way to teach somebody? It's repetition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're not just one company, you're 3 companies.
Correct.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. How does that work?
It's more like 5 or 6 companies.
Okay.
So in order to pay for us to exist and for the hangar space, we have Hangar 743, which is an event venue. The hangar we're standing in right now, we actually rent out to corporate and private events as an event venue, which is amazing for the Northeast to have an event venue where you can actually have your event opening out onto an active runway where planes are taking off and landing. It's obviously received a lot of national attention and local attention as a premier venue. That allows the maintenance shop and the warbird storage to exist. You come from a background of of dealing with historic aviation, and how do you pay the bills on the hangars? Of course, it's a delicate balance dealing with the mechanics and the people preserving the warbirds, and that, okay, depending on the event, sometimes we have to move the planes outside and they have to be outside for a little while. But they all understand that we wouldn't have the rest of the hangar maintenance facilities and the other tools of the trade here if we didn't have something helping pay the bills. I think all of us realize in the aviation world, a aviation maintenance shop would have a very difficult time standing on its own and paying all of its own bills. So, by putting all of the businesses together, it allows them to all succeed.
So on top of that too, for the foundation fundraising and community outreach, we also do 2 events a year. So one's our big gala, usually a little bit closer to spring. So it's a big fundraising gala for the foundation itself and for the workforce development program, which we can talk about in a bit. And then also our other event, Wings and Wheels, is coming up. That's a little bit more community-based. So a little bit of a car show, air show. We'll have a bunch of aircraft out on the ramp. So that's a little bit more community-driven.
So Dave, tell me about this model you got hanging from the ceiling.
So you said you were out at Oshkosh in Wisconsin. So as you approached the warbird area, there was actually a little shack that you walked by with a manufacturer called Warbird Aircraft Replicas.
Okay.
They have their own club. They're actually out at AirVenture every year. But this is one of the designs the original designer had. This is a half-scale Corsair with a Continental 0200 engine is what it originally had in it. Fully retractable gear that actually rotates 90 degrees, just like the original, into the plane. There's several still flying around the country, and it's a very safe.
So that's not a model, that's a real
No,
airplane.
that's a real airplane that I flew. Everything has a story. Everything's been around for 80 years, and we find new interesting stories all the time. So the Corsair that we're restoring, we were repairing the wing skins, and we found an obvious bullet hole. And when you look on the back, you'll actually see the patch, and it's extremely obvious to a lot of warbird restoration folks that, well, that's a bullet hole. The plane didn't fly in combat during World War II. Where did a bullet hole come from? We traced the history of the plane, ended up finding out that it was part of the El Salvador Air Force. And in 1969, El Salvador and Honduras had the last piston engine fighter versus piston engine fighter combat known, where Corsairs and Mustangs actually fought against each other, both supplied by the U.S. military to their fledgling air forces. And ours was hit by ground fire on July 15th, 1969. During the 100-hour soccer war. So this is our machine shop side. Obviously, with you being involved in aviation as long as you have, you really can't have aircraft maintenance without having access to a machine shop. So what we do with a lot of the aircraft parts that are no longer airworthy is we make artwork with them. And in this case, we have our Wings and Wheels car show coming up. So with various different automotive parts in this case, we built some trophies. And we do a lot of commission work. One of the pieces you just missed, but we'll share some pictures with you, is just north of here is where General Electric had their rocket research facility. So we actually built America's first ground-to-ground rocket for a business that is located on that business tech park, for it to be out in front of their building.
Super cool, super cool.
The Hermes rocket.
So also having this capability in-house not only is cool with the art and being able to do custom work, but sometimes you find you're going through the restoration process or an annual on a warbird, and you find yourself needing a very customized piece of sheet metal or rib work, and having that capability to machine it in-house is huge for us. So as Dave was mentioning, this is the B-25 that had to make a forced landing a few years ago. So we've slowly been making progress through it. One of the hardest things was trying to find jigs to make sure the tail was straight so that we could reskin it and replace all the structure. So our custom fabrication shop actually made this jig for the tail section. And as you can see, we had to completely deskin the complete underside of the belly, remake everything, reprime it. And we're finally getting to a point where our mechanics are shooting the skins back together and hopefully have the tail out of the jig here in the next few weeks. So the longerons are a very critical piece to the tail. You know, they're the main structure in the back end. These are the original ones. They were damaged very heavily in the accident. And because of the compound curve, you can see, I'll turn on here, just because of that compound curve that goes down the length of it, you can't just make them or form them. You have to have a set of stamps to actually form. You have to machine them from billet, very expensive, very time consuming, or have the set of stamps. And there was really only one set of stamps left in the country, so Aerosport out in Chino, California, were able to get their hands on that and form these brand new ones for us. So these are, will get fit up into the fuselage, drilled, and then shot in. And that's really the last piece of structure we need to be able to get the tail out of the jig. And those are our two A&Ps that are really, pushing through all this, reskinning the aircraft. It's a scan of a scan of a scan half the time. So now you have to, decipher where your references are, what your actual, measurements are,
Right.
and then even having to
I'm learning
calculate.
that with my old traveler plans
Yeah.
right now. It's the same thing.
So it's finding the correct document to get to, interpreting the document, and then, getting it into the jig formed up correctly to actually have the proper references to shoot everything back together. So the T6 was built at the tail end of the war. And then after the war, the U.S. had to kind of divest itself of aircraft. So it went down to South Africa to train the South African Air Force, where it continued to train the South African Air Force until the late 80s. And then they had to get rid of their aircraft. So there was an influx of T6s back into the U.S. market, where a lot of private collectors bought them. So you can see our aircraft, we like to keep our stuff a little bit more modern because they fly a lot. So we have the G5s in there with the Garmin system.
You've started seeing, and a lot of people always ask us all the time about nose art. Where's nose art come from? Why is it there? Most nose art is just simply to tell a story. When you get a chance to look at the cowlings for this airplane carries the nose art Deja Vu. So people ask us all the time, where's Deja Vu come from? The history on this aircraft is this aircraft was delivered to the Army Air Corps in 1943, but shortly thereafter was actually sent to the British under the Lend-Lease program. The British sent it to South Africa, which was a colony of England at the time. This aircraft actually remained in continuous military operation until 1995. Remember what happened in 1995?
I wasn't alive then.
Okay. See, that's a good answer. So in 1995, a guy by the name of Nelson Mandela approached the United Nations for an arms embargo against South Africa for apartheid. That arms embargo, enforced by the United Nations, canceled the 99-year Lend-Lease Act that this aircraft was under. The South African Air Force had to box this plane back up and ship it back to the United States. The United States Air Force at the time was no longer using these as training aircraft in 1995, so they auctioned them off to the civilian market. Well, the first owner of this aircraft, who picked this out of a shipping container and had it assembled and painted, originally named this aircraft Betty Boop, owned it for a few years, and then sold it as he moved on to a different airplane. He noticed it come up for sale again a few years later, and he goes, you know what, I love the plane so much, he bought it back. His wife had him change the name to Deja Vu. He owned it again, he sold it again, and he bought it back a third time. So I now own the airplane under one of our restoration entities. And this aircraft, we hope, remains with us for a while, and he doesn't have to own it again. You know the story about the penny?
No, tell me the story about the penny.
So Pratt & Whitney engines, you'll see on the Corsair as well, you'll see in all Pratt & Whitney engines, have a penny there. Why do you think it's there?
Beats me.
You ever heard of an Easter egg in a video game?
Yeah.
Okay. So most A&P mechanics you'll talk to, or most pilots you'll talk to, will say that the penny is there for good luck.
Okay.
In common folklore. You'll look at the penny, and the year of the penny is the year the engine was overhauled. Okay, that's all great. Well, excuse me. Because we're near Connecticut,
Sorry.
we'll cut that out.
Yep, gotcha.
Because we're near Connecticut, a Pratt & Whitney engineer from back in the day came and he had us tell him the same story. He goes, "That's actually not where that comes from." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "This is an early version of an Easter egg that we now have in video games." Some Pratt & Whitney engineers, it was believed, were not happy with the fact that before World War II, Pratt & Whitney was actually selling engines to the Germans and the Japanese, and they fully believed the Germans and the Japanese were going to reverse engineer and copy our designs. So they threw little items like this around the engine, because if it's copied, it would show that it was straight out copied, because this has absolutely no engineering or functional purpose at all. But what's great though, when we have kids come in, it's great to see them using logical thinking to actually come up with a real reason that it's there. There are a lot of kids who will come up with and say, well, you put a copper penny in there for dissimilar metals for corrosion. It's not correct, but hey, what I like to see is that they're thinking, that they're coming up with a reasonable answer.
You learn something new every day. After getting up close and personal with the T6, we walked out onto the ramp to find a beautiful Cirrus SR22.
So this is a 2024 SR20 G7, pretty much brand new right off the line. G1000 based Garmin Perspective Plus avionics. So you're going from 1946 T6 in the shop and out here to the newest, latest, greatest engineering that GA has to offer.
Well, it's very interesting that you guys have, a lot of times in vintage, aviation or warbirds, I don't know the warbird community as well as you do the vintage community, but there's a lot of, oh, those Cirrus guys. Or, There's a lot of stigma about Cirrus pilots, even though they are such an amazing, feat of engineering.
Yeah.
And the fact that you guys have bridged that gap, it's kind of the coolest of both worlds.
And it's, every aircraft serves a mission. And when you're going into an aircraft, you have to know what your mission is. Is it to get from point A to point B with a family? Is it to go have fun in the grass strips? And Cirrus fits a very specific mission. It's to get from point A to point B in comfort and fast.
Yeah.
So that's the mission it serves, but it is fun because a lot of our instructors come from, so I'm a C-130 pilot myself, so very old school, 1973 vintage aircraft. So we're trying to bridge that gap as well with that stigma of training the new generation of Cirrus pilots with some of the older school techniques of the warbirds and just older school flying techniques.
So is this part of your Cirrus program?
It is. So for the Cirrus Training Center, we actually use the Cirrus Approach software.
Okay.
So one thing Cirrus does really well is create an entire ecosystem. So they have a full LMS program online for a private pilot's license. So it has all the ground training, videos, flight syllabuses, and then also sim syllabuses.
Okay, so one of my intrusive thoughts, I don't know if it counts as an intrusive thought. I mean, it's definitely something that you train, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've always wondered, ever since I've made a couple videos in the Cirrus now, I've always wanted to pull a chute. So
we can make that happen.
Let's do it.
So the cap system in the Cirrus is not available below 600 feet AGL.
Okay.
You'll just kind of crash into the ground. It won't do anything for you. But between 6,000 and 2,000 is available. And then above 2,000 feet, you get the full opening of the parachute.
Gotcha.
1,700 foot permitted descent, controlled crash. Not crash, well, let down. And optimally what you do, so let's say you just lose an engine right now, you can pull your power all the way back. Oh no, what am I gonna do? Can't really do anything. You can go right up, and it's gonna take two hands. You kind of have to pull it down. It's, yep.
So that's it, right?
That, and then you want to pull your mixture all the way back, make sure your engine's off, shut off all the switches on the panel there, make sure all your electricals are off. And at this point, it's just a controlled descent. So what a lot of people don't realize is once you pull that chute, the plane actually kind of veers up very significantly.
Yeah.
And then goes very nose low.
Yeah.
And then it will actually settle out.
So is this rate, the rate that it's falling, is that accurate?
Yep, 1,700 foot per minute is the designed rate. So it's about 20 miles per hour you're gonna hit. But the seats have kind of a cushion crumple material in them, so then that absorbs the landing gear and the seats absorb most of the impact.
Oh, never seen that happen before.
So this is our kind of auxiliary hangar, so we share it with a couple of tenants, but we have two bays over here, so when the aircraft are not being worked on or not on the ramp, we kind of store them down here. So our TBM Avenger, which you can she's the the big old turkey, as the name has been given, over there. She actually was on the air show circuit this summer. We were planning to do a full engine change this winter, over the winter, but she decided it was time, so it was stuck out in Peru at the TBM gathering. And in the course of 3 months, we got all of our vendors together, our mechanics together. We got a fully overhauled engine, shipped it out there. 3 of our mechanics flew out there, and I think the calculation was like 260 man hours in 5 days.
Wow.
And they were able to hang the new engine, the overhauled carb, and fly her home for the winter.
Wow.
But between, so we do regional air shows every summer with the TBM, and then also our Japanese Zero, which is actually a T6. It's one of the Tora planes that flew in Tora, Battle of Midway, and
Okay.
what's the last one? Baba Black Sheep.
So tell me a little bit about these guys.
Yep, so here we have the Hawker Hurricane. So earlier on, 2 British birds. So the Hawker was the predecessor to the Spitfire, which came on a little bit later in the war. So this Hawker Hurricane lived its life in Canada, where it was manufactured. There was an agreement between the Brits and Canada to help manufacture aircraft for them. But this Spitfire has some good heritage to it. So she actually flew in the war and escorted all the bombers across the channel. And this specific Spitfire actually flew with the Memphis Belle.
Wow. When was this last restoration?
I am unsure of that. We can look it up. But it just did its annual, so she is in flying condition. Gotcha. She was going to go to an air show this year, but she needed a new carb, so we had to put that on. But this specific aircraft is pretty much original stock.
Wow.
There is an ADS-B antenna hidden somewhere, and if you can find that antenna, I'd be highly impressed, because it took our mechanics a while to figure out where to hide it.
Really?
Yeah, to make it look original still. Just to hide the ADS-B antenna versus so that it can fly to the air shows. They made a mount in here that's on a hinge, so that when it's required, the antenna kind of comes up into this bump up here.
Yeah.
It works, and then when he gets to the air show, he stuffs it away with the hinged bracket, and it's hidden.
Gone.
Yep.
Most people probably think it's like a light or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that a Corsair over there?
It is. So
tell me a little bit about that.
You saw the full Corsair up there.
Yep.
So the Prescott Foundation, we are in the process of also restoring our Corsair. So Dave mentioned the 100-hour war.
Yep.
And the bullet hole, and that came from this plane. So she was out at a shop getting restored, and some things happened, so we decided to bring it home to have our mechanics finish the restoration. But it was pretty much torn apart to pieces, to nothing, and fully restored, and the goal is to fully restore it to factory new.
Wow.
And might not look like much because we have it covered, but if you get up there, you can see that the cockpit has already been restored to pretty much factory new, original.
Now, are these all the
These
control
are,
surfaces for it?
yep, so these are the flight controls and surfaces for the Corsair. And then behind that, we have bits and pieces of our B-25, some extra random stuff for our art that we do.
Yeah.
We have the wings over there for the B-25 with the stabs behind it, horizontal stabs behind it. Then some other fun stuff that we have and collect, so vintage tugs, Humvee from the Gulf War era, and then once we come back around, we can talk about the other 2 vehicles over there.
Yeah, let's go check it out.
So this is a vintage ambulance from World War II, and what's interesting about it is it can actually be traced back to D-Day.
Wow.
And that's because these ambulances did not come stock with cabin heaters. They were just, we never were really in a theater that required heat. But the invasion of Normandy and France and that part of the world at that time during D-Day, it was very cold. So they had a contract to create electric cabin heaters and put them into the ambulances. And that's how we found out that this can actually be traced back to that, because this is one of the ambulances that has that installed.
All right, well, Austin, Dave, thank you so much for walking me through your beautiful venue here today. Venue, Cirrus shop, warbird restorers, art factory, everything. You guys do
Let's
it all.
just say it's just keeping aviation alive.
Yeah, but that's Hangar 743. It all happens here. Well, you guys definitely go check these guys out, and you guys have a website, right?
We do.
What is it?
Hangar743.com.
Hangar743.com. All right, well, I'm going to have that link here. You guys go and check it out. You can find their art for sale there. Can people contact you about events, booking events in your venue there?
Absolutely.
Well? Okay.
And that's
Check
all right
that
on
out.
that website. So.
Yeah, awesome. It's a one-stop shop. So I'll link that here. Thanks again for running me through all this. This is so cool to see. And then hopefully we'll get to go fly the T6 and one of the Cirrus airplanes soon.
Absolutely.
So
and soon we'll be congratulating your AP license.
Yes, I know. I need to work on it. Need to get it done. So,
We'll get you
all right,
done.
you guys. Well, thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.